So, do you have any tips that you've picked up that you think are just like perfect gems that work for you in terms of how to integrate the different parts of your life? And, you know, I talk about work, home, community, and self in my work in the total leadership framework, and it's a kind of a natural way to think about the different pieces. Do you have any, some practical suggestions for our viewers about what you've picked up?
My suggestions are be somewhat pragmatic about it. I think there's you have to be sort of realistic with the finite amount of time you have. Mm-hmm. So we're all making choices, and and those choices come consequences. I mean, I'm the CEO now of a multinational company, which has travel associated with it. If I were the CEO of a Boston-based company, where all our employees and all our clients are right there, I might be able to earn a similar living, but the travel aspect would not be there. But there isn't a Boston-based company that would give me the opportunity that I think exists with Bright Horizons and the connection and the mission, everything I talked about before. So you're making a pragmatic choice there to do that, and so it's accepting that. So what comes with that choice and what comes with the reality that I am away is that other stuff has to be sacrificed. And what I mean by that is I try and maximize my time with my kids when I am home, not in a quantity standpoint, but in a quality standpoint. I coach softball, I coach soccer, I do that, I make a point to do it. I do it, I love doing it, but I also, I also want to be sure that I have some dedicated time, to do that with. What I'm sacrificing, frankly, right now in this phase of my life is being involved in some community-related stuff. I've always had an interest in sort of, my town. My neighbor is sort of our town has these representatives of different neighborhoods that get together to make decisions and what goes on in town. That's interesting to me. My neighbor's a lawyer, works locally. He does it, always talks to me about it. Come to a meeting, come to a meeting. I can't come to a meeting. I just can't do it. Same with several boards, nonprofit things that I do. I deal with that by trying to give money where I can, as opposed to really dedicate my time.
Every day, what you do with your company is to provide a community service.
Oh, I'm not at all. All I'm saying is you need to be pragmatic with. You asked me the question about what tips you would give. I mean, I could let that sort of guilt hang over me of all the things that I don't have time for, as opposed to trying to focus on the things you do have time for. But yeah, I'm very lucky in that the company that I help to lead and that I care so passionately about is making a difference in the world, has a strong and thriving foundation that I sit on the board of that goes beyond the services that we do to give to homeless children and make an impact in communities. Yeah, that's right.
Let's find a couple of minutes to hear just a bit about that, because that's something that I am a supporter of as well and feel very strongly about, and I'm just so happy that your firm has been leading that charge.
Well, you think about sort of our responsibility to give back to the communities where we live and work, and all companies I think talk about that. Roger and Linda, who founded the company, took that to the next level when they started an organization in Boston, what was then called the Horizons Initiative, now called Horizons for Homeless. It's turned into a freestanding organization, one of the most successful startups of nonprofits in Boston. It runs several homeless child care centers exclusively for homeless families, trains welfare to work. But here's an example. Like when Mary Ann and I assumed the leadership roles we did, we said, you know what, the Horizons for Homeless, Horizons Initiative, is something that was really right and really deep for, and still is important to our culture at Bright Horizons. But we now operate in so many different places around the country and around the world that the people in California or Texas or Atlanta, they hear about the Horizons for Homeless, but they have no emotional connection to it.
I mean, the people in your company.
The people in our company. So we wanted to take the lessons learned in Boston and provide a way to unlock the passion that our own people have to want to give back to the communities where they're living and working. And that's not Boston, a lot of times. It's everywhere else.
Right.
So we took a program that you referred to, Bright Spaces, and Bright Spaces essentially allows us to take rooms in homeless shelters or domestic violence shelters and create miniature versions of our child care centers with resources that are partly paid for by our own, through our own donations of profits, but also our client partners lots of times donate to it. So in the city of Philadelphia, we developed 20 of these bright spaces in citywide homeless shelters in partnership with McNeil Pharmaceuticals, who's based in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. Right. And it was a great partnership with the city of Philadelphia, us and McNeil, and today we have those facilities there. We have 175 of them now across the U.S. Amazing. We just opened our first 2 in Europe, first one in Ireland. And this is, again, when you talk about building culture, this is about giving back to the community, yes. It's about doing the right thing. But it's another one of those things that really engages people to work for Bright Horizons. And that's really
passion, right? And that's what we're looking for. I'm a big advocate of what I call a 4-way win. Changes that bring value to work and home and community and the domain of the private self. And this seems to be just a perfect example of one that really does that. That you tap into the energy and commitment that people have for doing service and helping people in need, that not only provides that service, but it actually brings more of them into the whole picture of what you're trying to get done as a company.
That's right.
And you see that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that has to help you also in the labor market, right?
Well, it clearly helps.
That must appeal particularly to the current generation.
That appeals a lot to the current generation, and it just appeals in general, historically, to the people who've chosen this as a career. Because people who've chosen this as a career, by nature, are people that are willing and want to give back, and they want to be doers, not necessarily givers, because they don't have the economic means, or they're not in the position. They want to actually help create change themselves. And so I think it's a big thing. Just like I think the next wave of that for us will be being sure that we can be seen as a responsible citizen of our environment. And going green is a big piece of our future, and we're starting to do a lot, in that way now. But you think about sort of what resonates. Not only is that the right thing to do. I look at 3 things. I look at going green. I look at giving back to communities through community work, and I look at diversity. All as things that are the very things we're teaching children in our programs that adults in our community really care a lot about, and sort of pillars on which our culture can be can stand on over the long run.
So you're looking to do more in those areas.
Oh yeah. Those are 3 areas that I feel like in diversity and in community impact, we're doing a lot of good things already. We've been far more deliberate. In going green, we're sort of in the early stages of doing a lot, but it's sort of widespread. It's happening center by center on a grassroots level, which is good. That's a great way for things to start as opposed to being top down, meaning we have certain locations all around that are doing phenomenal things with with recycling and with saving paper and with lots of different things. But as a company, we're still formulating sort of what we want to stand for, as a company. We just made a commitment at our leadership conference a couple weeks ago to make a commitment to save 20%, reduce our paper consumption by 20%, starting in July of this year through July of 2009, and to integrate recycled paper in as a result of that. And so you think about when we say that, we're not just talking about what we're using in our copy machines. We're talking about what we're using in preschool classrooms that kids go through paper like crazy with, and getting kids to actually respect, paper as a resource as opposed to just endless, one-sided, one-scribble stuff. Yeah,
something
exactly.
That's precious.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's we have to bring it to a close here.
Sure.
But as you think about the next generation, there's some questions that come to mind about how you envision the future of your company, but also the future of the workforce that you're, of course, helping to train and shape with the work that you do in the centers around the country and now around the world. What's your sense of where things are going in terms of the values that we're kind of propagating through our schools and through our various means of educating people outside of schools, media, et cetera. And given that picture, I know this is a real big picture question, but bear with me. Given your sense of where things are going and maybe some adjustments might need to be made, do you see yourself or your company doing anything that's sort of targeted at making things better?
Well, it's a big question with lots of, that probably could consume an interview time just like this and just answering it. But I would say this, I think that the education system in the U.S., we have to figure out a way, particularly at the early education level and the primary education level, to sort of turn it on its head in terms of how divided it is based on socioeconomic means. I mean, there's just no question that, that the resources afforded and the level of care that's put into schools in communities where there are better, more affluent communities is just different. And you can look at scores and everything, and,
Sure.
and you just see that. So we've got to figure out a way to not just have schools be a virtue of, or the quality of schools be a virtue of where you've chosen to live, because by definition, people who are more affluent are also more mobile, and so you can move to places where schools are better,
Right.
Because you have that ability to do it, where the poorest people don't have that advantage, and we've got to figure out a way to get. So when you talk about school choice, well, we sort of have it because people who can afford to do it can just move to a town where it's good, whereas the people who can't afford it can't ever have that option. So I think that's a big issue for us. With respect, and I'll speak very selfishly about our own business and our own company. I think that early childhood education, the opportunity to engage a child in learning when his or her brain is really ready, and brain research has showed this over time. We spend such a small amount of money as a country on early childhood education, and I would always advocate on lots of levels for for more support, more government support of what I see as a very critical issue, and what businesses are addressing. I mean, businesses are addressing, and our business is essentially enabled by the gaps that were created in society by having more women in the workforce, more dual working families, and as a result, the gaps that were created in in childcare and early education. We're filling that, but to be honest, we're filling that for a certain group of people who happen to be
Right.
employed by really good companies, and
Beneficent.
over here there's a whole other group of people who should be able to benefit from a similar
Government has to fill
good
that
start
gap.
in life. Yeah, I think the government has to not only fill that gap, but they have to rethink some of the programs that have been directed towards filling that gap for years, that have become sort of annuity investments that the government's made, and evaluate whether or not those systems are working. If they're working, great. Maybe it's a time to expand them. If they're not, then maybe it's time to rethink them. But lastly, what I'll say is I'm encouraged by the values that I'm seeing from Gen Y, or whatever you want to call it, with respect to the environment, with respect to how people are viewing work, women's opportunities, and the equality of gender. I think there's a sort of a different viewpoint emerging with this new generation, and I hope that aside from just being good employees and good leaders within business, that there'll be there's some optimism with respect to some good changes that can happen in the world.
So how do you want to be remembered when you're done? When
Wow.
you're at the other end
Wow.
of the road here.
Chest pains. I'd like to be remembered by my kids as somebody who gave them unconditional love, and who helped support them and help them become thoughtful human beings who are motivated and want to make a difference. I'd like to be remembered by in business as somebody who was people like to rally around, and that could that made a difference, that listened, that was somebody who could have good people around them and not necessarily be sucking up all the credit and sort of grandstanding in that way, but was successful in that way. I'd like to and then lastly, I'd like to be remembered by making a difference in ways that I'm not so sure I've been able to do yet. So I think there's still some opportunities for me to do things that are later on in life that are down a different track, whether that be community-based work, political type work, international work. I haven't quite put my finger on it yet, but I've been fortunate to achieve pretty good results at a pretty young age, and feel like my version of retirement, whenever that comes, which isn't in the near future, I have opportunities to do things. And And one thing that I think I would definitely want to do is, we talk about work-life and connection, do something truly in partnership with my wife that was outside of the home, because I think that's the one place that, you know, we are disconnected. And, you know, in terms of actually having, she does some things, I do some things, and then we kind of get together when there's social events, but there's nothing, there's no cause, there's no issue that we're truly partnering on and really working on together. And I think that's, once we get through having children be that cause and having, consuming all our time, we'll see where that takes us.
Well, that's a story yet to be told that I'm certainly going to be interested in, and I'm sure many of the people watching this will be too.
Well, good.
Dave, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you.
Always my pleasure to be with you, Stu.
Thanks. Thank you.